Greetings, everyone. This is Mike Riley, the voice of Ironman. And this is the Old School Tri Show with my Kiwi mates Cameron Harper and Brian Ashby. The show that talks about all things triathlon, old and new. We're powered by Ansco Foods, bringing you nutrition and good health from New Zealand's beef and lamb. Thanks for listening, everyone. Enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to the Old School Tri Show as we look back at 40 years of Ironman New Zealand alongside the good people at Ansco Foods. Rapidly approaching the 40th anniversary in March 2024, and as we continue to look back, Brian Ashby, we've got another fantastic guest.
Certainly have. This one is a 4 times Ironman New Zealand champion, but one of the finest sports people that New Zealand has ever produced, Erin Baker.
Ansco Foods is proud to be the new naming partner of Ironman New Zealand, ensuring every stroke, pedal and stride is powered by the best nature has to offer. Ansco Foods is on a mission to bring nutrition and good health from New Zealand's finest beef and lamb. Ansco Foods, putting the iron in Ironman with New Zealand's finest beef and lamb. Visit anscofoods.com/Ironman to find out more.
Well, our guest in today's conversation achieved everything imaginable at the time when she was competing. A pioneer whose achievements were quite remarkable, but fighting for the things that she believed in kind of made her transcend the sport too. A 4-time winner at Ironman New Zealand. That doesn't even begin to tell the story. Erin Baker, hi and welcome.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here. Thank you.
We're going to start with an apology. Sort of sent you a bit sideways when we talked about 40 years of Ironman New Zealand.
I know. I mean, gosh, but I mean, I'm just not that old. It's, now I know why my mother said she never felt old, because you just don't feel that old. You don't feel it's been that many years, and you certainly don't feel like you're that person that's got numbers like 6 in front of there, 62 I am now. It's old, but it's so young. I just don't feel any different.
It's interesting, Erin, because so I was just going to say, often you look in the mirror and you think to yourself, who's this person looking back at me?
Oh,
I definitely have that.
I actually don't do that, because you just stop looking in the mirror, actually, Cameron. There's just no point anymore.
I mean, that the time has flown, but it sounds as though there's a real clarity in your head. It all just sort of seems like yesterday to you.
Well, I mean, of course, it's sort of a bit silly to say it seems like yesterday, and my memory's not great, but it certainly doesn't seem those many numbers of years ago. It just doesn't. It just seems, maybe I could have said, my last Ironman was 15 years ago rather than it be like whatever, 30 plus years ago. It just seems that those years just go so incredibly quickly. And because I still exercise quite a lot, especially over the last few years again, you don't actually think that you're so far beyond what you used to do.
Let's talk about Ironman New Zealand specifically. And 1986 was your first year racing there. You skipped the first year. And I guess a lot of that, you were well established internationally, and you'd had an Iron win in Australia the year before. But for you, it wasn't a sentimental thing. It was about business for you, right?
Look, I don't know, to be honest. I don't know why I didn't do it, but I can tell you I never wanted to do any of them. I just thought that the distance was ridiculous. So when I did Australia, it was much more just, I don't know, I just felt that, I had been an athlete, a kid athlete when I was younger. I had seen, the Alison Rose and the Anne O'Danes and Lorraine Mollers do great things, and I was, working, and I had, been a little bit of a runner and a good wee swimmer, but, never great. And when I was in Australia, this event just came up, and because of my circumstances, and I was biking to work a lot, and that was quite a long distance, and I just thought, I think I can do that. And it didn't seem so insane. I'd done a couple of half distance and a few sprints, and of course it wasn't in Hawaii. It wasn't in 45-degree heat. So I did it because it just seemed like, oh, maybe that'll, fulfill a little compartment of things I thought I should one day could do or something. So that's what that TUI's event in Australia did, that Great Lakes event. But I never thought, I always thought Hawaii, to be perfectly honest, was ridiculous. I used to, think, why would people do that? I just thought, it just doesn't, academically and physiologically make sense to push yourself so hard in the heat. And it was just the whole distance didn't do a lot for me. I mean, I really liked these shorter events and I was good at them. So, whereas I can't actually enunciate why I didn't actually do the first one, it certainly, wasn't breaking my heart that I didn't. I must have had something else I was aiming for, or, I'm not sure what else.
Yeah. So what got you to the start line in Auckland in '86 then?
Well, then I think because maybe after another year or so, obviously this was what I now did. I did triathlon. I had sponsors. That's a big deal. I'm just clinically a workhorse. I got it from my father, especially. If I'm doing something, I have to do it well. Doesn't matter what it is. Today it was standing decks. I just have to. And so once it became my job, then I had to do what my job entailed. And then once I had sponsors, then you must do, and you must do well for your sponsor. So it was obviously by that time I had some sponsors or whatever it was, and that's what you did. I did triathlon, and then the New Zealand event was,
just a wee
an
bit of a
important
cutout at my
triathlon,
end
and
here,
so I
but
did it.
I'm just
So,
wondering,
Erin, if I put you-
you talk about your wonderful work ethic that that you had that came from your dad and so on, and it's probably a good time to segue in the role of John Hellemans and when he came into your life and how you hooked up with him as a coach. Just tell us a wee bit about that, because I know I've heard John on numerous occasions talk about you, and so on. I'm keen to sort of hear about John and his role in making things roll for you.
Well, it sort of just sort of slid on in there because we both ran for New Brighton Athletic and Harrier Club. But at that stage, I would have thought he was, 30 years older than me, because he was, maybe 6 years or something, 5 or 6 years older than me. But it just seemed like an enormous difference when you're like 16, 17. And so it's not like I knew him well. I didn't really know him at all. But I went, especially, I think it might have been the Mooloolaba Triathlon, where it was Sally Edwards came and Murphy Reinschreiber, I think his name was, came, and John came, and I pretty much saw both I won the women's and John won the men's, and we sort of at that stage I probably went, oh, I know you, and we never hooked up as in, will you be my official coach? I think we were just both actually exploring triathlon because John also was a very, very good triathlete. And had it not been for, age and stage, I mean, he had a family. I mean, I knew him more as a father because he had 2 young girls when I got to know him, and they were little girls, teeny wee girls. And so again, I thought of him as being much older because kids were, well, you only had those when you got old. And so it was more, we just talked about things. And then I sort of mentioned that, he I think might have said to me, you maybe want to go to Europe. And I couldn't go to America because of that whole, Springbok tour thing. So I think I was thinking, well, I'd go to Europe. And he sort of said, well, why don't you, we're going to Europe as a family this year. And I more hooked on with them. I didn't rely on John every day. I didn't really have this, this is what you do Monday to Friday. I never had that. But as I got better at the sport, we would talk about, what you need to do at a certain time. Maybe you need to do this now, and you need to do these enough long rides and enough long runs. And so he was more of a, rather than what people have nowadays, a really formal coach. You talk to them probably most days and you write down your program. It was never like that. He would just sort of say, well, I was also very intuitive about what I should do in my training. And so it was more we just discussed, training concepts, and he'd come up with something else. When I was in Christchurch, I remember him saying, well, what about we do, intervals on the Port Hills, your runs up and then your bike and then you run and blah, blah, blah. So we did those things. But so that was how our relationship sort of always was. He, apart from once, never told me to do anything. Most of the time we discussed things and I did them, or I knew what to do anyway.
Are you
You're
allowed to tell us
discussing
what the
things.
one? I was just going to say, you're allowed to tell us what the one time he told you what to do.
Oh, it was, well, that was a very funny day, or not so funny. There's a bike ride. They used to call it short-based time trial, but it wasn't. It was, you started at the bottom of Dyers, which you would know if you're in Christchurch. So you start your watch there, and then you would finish right at the bottom of Evans, right? So you'd go up Dyers, over to Littleton, round the bays, up Littleton Hill, down Evans Pass, bang, stop your watch. And it was a bloody hard time trial. We used to do it in about 52 minutes. And he would say, so I think one day he said to me, well, either go swimming and then go and do the bike time trial, or go do the time trial and then I'll see you at the pool, or something like that. Anyway, I was raining and I was like, oh, yes, great, I'm not going to do that time trial, I'll go to the pool. Because, it was 52 minutes of, max heart rate. And I got to the pool and John was standing there and I was like, ah. And he said, you haven't done that time trial, have you? And I said, no, it's raining. And he goes, go now and do the time trial. Go. I was like, and I did, of course. But I was surprised. But that was the only time he really went, you should do that. You need to do it. Doesn't matter if it's raining. Told you to do it. You haven't done it. Go.
I mean, I laugh because I know John has sort of said in the past, because it was a new sport, and so he was learning ideas and learning training methods and things. And to that end, I mean, it's not the most flattering description, but you're kind of the lab rat because you have got this great capacity to smash yourself.
Yes, and I was, and he knows I was. We used to go to the track in Ireland at the university. Used to have a track, and he'd say, "This is what we're going to do." I can't quite, just let's say, 6, 1200s or 6 1Ks on the 315 or whatever, half a lap jogging, and off we'd go and start, and I'd start and, do it, and we get to 3 or 4, and, he'll be watching this one day, and he would pull off, and then he'd pretend to be the coach, with the stopwatch, because he was absolutely knackered, I was quite a good runner, and I could, in fact, a funny story, I was on the track one day in Boulder, Colorado, and I used to often do, am I talking about it right? 3 minutes. What was that? 3 minutes a K? Yeah. And so I would often do, K reps with half a lap in between. And so I was doing this set of 6 times 1K. Remember, it's altitude. And I was descending from 310 down to 250 with half a lap in between. And, that's what I did, and I did it. And at the end of the session, because there's other athletes all around you when you're in Boulder, Colorado, Robert De Costello came up to me and he said to me, you should do Big 7 this weekend. And I said, what's that? He said, it's a road race. And I said, oh, should I? He said, you should. And I said, how would I get into that? He said, I'll get a guy to call you. And so he got a guy to call me and sort of act as an agent so I could get in it. And I went to Big 7 and I won it.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's the story. That's my
But I mean, we'll look at sort of different races and things, Ironman New Zealand and things. But your results, I guess, probably weren't a huge shock to you because you did incredible work. Was more of a surprise to you your ability to do the amount of work, absorb the amount of work that you did at the intensities at which you did it? Was that more of a surprise?
Well, I guess I didn't know any different.
Yeah.
See, I didn't get injured and I could do it and I could do all the work and I could go to Palm Springs and train my tail off. In fact, I remember, thinking that probably I could train so hard And so for so long without getting injured, I realized later on it was a bit detrimental because I could keep going really a lot and really hard and never break down. And so, overtraining probably came to mind. But it was just the way I am, I just didn't get injured. And it's my, body type. And so if you have work to do, you do it. And, I used to always laugh at people with, foolishly, but with, heart rate monitors and all that sort of stuff, it's like, just go hard, it's just that, get out there and go hard.
And I guess that was where it was leading to, Erin, because you do look at the things like the heart rate monitors and the technology of the time, and you think to yourself, well, what I do works for me, so why would I change?
Yeah, and it was, the technology hadn't got to where it had got to now. And I would think, well, I remember, I used to train with a woman called Sarah Springman. I remember going to the UK and training with her in Cambridge, and she was into heart rate monitors, and we would go and do something on the bike here and there and do some repeats or something. And at the end of the day, I would go faster than her. And at the end of the day, she'd come back and say, well, now that you did a good, but my heart rate did this, and so probably I did a better session than you because I had my heart rate at this level and that rate. I didn't do any of it. I didn't know what my VO2 max was, and no EPI. I didn't know this and that. I didn't know if I didn't care about it. I didn't. It wasn't. Nowadays you have to, and someone will be on your tail saying, you need to know this stuff because this is the difference. But I didn't know it, didn't care to know it, and while I was winning, I just kept going.
So we're at Ironman New Zealand. It's 1986, and it's not the Kona distance initially that we're doing. It's a different scenario in Auckland. How confident were you on the start line then, knowing the volume of work that you'd done, the success you'd had in Australia and so on? And were you even looking at other competitors? Was it just all about what was going on in your head and getting the job done?
It was always about getting the job done. I was never, ever arrogant enough to think that, things can't go wrong, or this is my, this is a shoe and I'm going to win it. Clinically looking back, I probably always was going to. And, once I got out on the bike, I was always in control. Once, my swimming at the time was probably my weakness, but once I got out on the bike and I could just know where other people were at, so most of the time it was, it was a clinical thing. This is work day. This is job to be done day. I've done my training. I'm, in great place and head space and physical space to win this event, and so off we go.
What sort of expectation did you put on yourself when you turned up to races in those days, Erin?
I was the expectation, to perform for others was my main reason to perform, to perform for the sponsors or the race or the public. And, I turned up, I don't know which one was because I've just never been a dates person, but one Ironman, and Weet-Bix and Sanitarium was sponsoring me. And I remember this one because I was as sick as a dog. The night before, I was ill as could be, and the last thing I can tell you I wanted to do was an Ironman. But I knew Sanitarium had full-page ads going in the paper. Like, normally I didn't, that was big at that time. It wasn't normally happening. And the ad was saying, Erin Baker's had Weet-Bix this morning or something before her Ironman. And I was, there's nothing I wanted to do less than go and do an Ironman. But, I got out there and I trucked on through it and got on through it. And the end of the race, all I actually wanted was a ice cream. But, and it was so funny because I was very unwell. And I think I said after the race, God, I couldn't eat a thing this morning or yesterday. And people got irate. And Sanitarium got whacked, because they said Erin Baker had Weet-Bix for breakfast. They put that ad in weeks ago.
Whoops.
Yeah. So
happens. Yeah. So the first one you had a win, and I think Julie Moss second and Sue Price third, but you were something like, oh gosh, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes, half an hour ahead of of the chasers. But the next year, 87 you come back and you defend your title, you smash it, but that's the year of your first world title. So you get to Kona. Finally, the
Okay.
doors are open, the visa into the USA.
Well, I mean, look, you're telling me because I just don't really remember
Yeah,
this stuff. I know Kona was a disaster because I think I pulled out that first year when I got into the event.
yeah,
So I mean, everything was, it seemed like the whole the Ironman, Auckland Ironman, New Zealand Ironman was, a very big deal by then. It was probably a big deal earlier, but it was on Tamaki Drive and we were getting crowds. And even though we were still running through all these people on the Tamaki Drive, it had an appeal. And we'd met a couple that were billeting us that we loved, got on with for years. And I think I by that stage of my career, I'd much more settled in to be content and think, oh, this is a good day, I think it wasn't raining. Maybe it was, but it's again just very much into job state. I didn't really in my Ironmans, maybe one in Hawaii. I can't quite remember, but I just didn't go through big highs and lows. I was very just. I'm in this part now. I'm finishing the swim. Get ready for the bike. Rightio, I'm on my bike now. Get in, and who's ahead of me? Because there's not often someone ahead of me out of the swim. Okay, where are they? Get up to there. Now, okay, past them. Okay, I'm not. Who's behind me? No, I'm probably going to be fine now. This is what I'll do. It was, Ironman events, as much and all as I didn't like them, they went very quickly because you always were thinking, who's where, what, and how. And so, yeah, it was just, click on through until you got to the end of the run, and that was it.
yeah.
So for you, the process of racing, I mean, you talk about motivated by the expectation of those around you and everything, but the process of racing, was it a real strong process for you to understand, right, I've got to do this swim, then I do the transition like this, I bike like that? I mean, what was that like for you?
Well, I mean, that's why you're always thinking. So yes, you do. I mean, you're thinking, especially there's certain stages of the race where your heart rate goes up enormously, like beginning the swim. So it's like, okay, we're out of the throngs now. We're out of we're out of that shit zone there. Okay, 400 meters into it. Calm down. Now get into your stroke. Just bang, 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 bang. Because so basically from maybe 400 meters right through to 3.6k or so, you're just breathe, bang. If I got, can I do anything better? But pretty much you're just there. And then the last couple of 100 meters, you're thinking about the transition. What am I going to do? Don't slip on this. Get my helmet. Get my gear. What am I going to do? And then the same with the early part of the bike. You're thinking about who's in front of you or who's, whatever. I don't think I thought much about, the swim time or anything like that. I don't know that we always knew them early on, what our swim time was. And then it was, again, just get into mode. And I was very, very, very poor at eating and drinking. In fact, I don't think I almost ever ate anything on the bike in my entire Ironman triathlon career. That was one of my, probably now they'd say that was my problem. So I used to have to try and force myself to drink. It's like, oh God, when you see the next whatever marker, make sure you've had a drink, because I just didn't bother. I never did. I just didn't. And I was like a camel. They called me that at one stage. So everything was just sort of, okay, now come on, please, go and get that, go drink something. Don't be so naughty. Have that water. Don't be naughty. And then just again, the run, I wouldn't say I thought much about it all, because I felt always very comfortable on the run, very at home on the run. Running I really loved, and I felt, I never got into a run and thought, oh, I'm cramping or, I'm blowing up or any of those sorts of things. I sort of just would get into my run and I ran.
A happy place,
Yeah.
We touched on this with Scott a bit last night, but yeah, We last night we were sort of talking about
I think
we're seeing it with
Brian's
the
internet
Norwegian
might be.
guys these days.
Sorry, Brian, you dropped out. Your voice dropped out for a second there.
Yeah.
Sorry. There you
That's
go.
all right.
There you go.
Just sort of saying,
broke the
we were
internet.
talking about it with Scott a bit last night. We're seeing the Norwegians these days doing every distance,
Yes.
imagine.
Yes.
That's what you guys had to do then. So how hard was it for you, crossing, and you were doing, duathlons and so on as well,
Yes.
thrown into the mix there. So Ironman, so right down to Olympic distance and so on. What was it like managing those things and racing as much as you were?
I didn't find it a big deal. I mean, I didn't change it up a lot. I certainly probably added track sessions with the sprint stuff. Maybe I didn't do as much on the track, although I probably did because I really loved running. So I probably loved being on the track, and we were always, we overtrained for sprints and middle distance. We, definitely did. But, that's what we did. There was never a day where you thought, well, I don't know what they do now for sprints. I have no idea. But there was never a day you thought, I'm just going to do, 5 times 100 in the pool and go out and do a, 20K time trial on my bike and, that's it for the day or something. Every day was swim, bike, run. And most days it was swim, bike, do 2 runs or, definitely several days we did 2 runs a day. So obviously when, like for Hawaiian Ironman, for example, and obviously probably the same for New Zealand, because for New Zealand, you're coming from your summer where you're not doing anything. So obviously you must go into long training scenario, I've had a couple of weeks off. It's now time to start to get ready for, Ironman New Zealand. And so you'd get on your bike and off you'd go to, bike to Ekaroa and back or whatever. But during the rest of the season, apart from Hawaiian Ironman, my training was always quite long and intensive. And it was only when I went to Palm Springs to train that you went straight, completely into Ironman mode with, 200K bike rides and that sort of thing.
Yeah. 86, 87, you won New Zealand. You've got your first Kona title and so on, but you weren't kind of really just feeling the love for the sport at that time. What was a turning point for you? There was somebody came into your life.
Yeah, well, Scott. Yeah, it was. I'm just very clinical. I think I'd felt that I'd done enough, and it's not the easiest life, and I was a bit sort of traveling by myself, all that thing. Other people think it's glamorous and this and that, and I thought, well, it's been good. I never really expected it to be, a full-time living gig. So I thought, well, if I've made some money up to now, that's pretty good. But, I met Scott and he just changed the way, I looked at it. He's like, you don't have to prove anything. Just try and enjoy it. Just try and have some fun with it. Just try and enjoy the people around you. Enjoy, some friendships. Enjoy, and that's what I did. I was able to, change my mindset from being, well, I better do this and I better do that to, this is okay. This is not a bad way to earn a living. So.
It worked really well for you, didn't it? Because like in 89, you win the first ever ITU world title, and you come back to New Zealand, you win there, you get your second title at Kona, and so on. You really hit your straps at that time. You were owning the sport completely.
Yeah, I probably was. I was I was happy. I am happy. I not, it's so corny, but, we're still married. We get on great. We spend most of our days together. It just, it was just so nice to be around someone that put some balance and perspective in my life. And, there's no doubt he had way more passion about the sport than me, but it was, I had someone to train with. He introduced me to people who I like to be around and I like to go training with. And so it did just take off the, my spikes a little bit, took off the, those little hardy edges, I think. And, and I did. I thought, he was like, you don't have to do it, but, you're good at it. Why don't enjoy it? And keep going for a while.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing when you get to a position where you feel you can choose to do something as opposed to feeling you have to, isn't it?
Totally, it's exactly right. And you feel very privileged if you ever get to that point. That you can go, yep, I can, and that's why I think I didn't do the number of Ironman events. That's why I didn't do every New Zealand Ironman, because I did choose, and I did choose what I wanted to do, and I did choose that I wanted to. I didn't do Hawaii one year because I chose to do Chicago Marathon, and people were going, this is crazy, and fortunately the sponsors, I cleared up with them, and they said, oh, that's all right. But people are like, well, you're not going to win that. No, I won't win it, but it'll be fun. I want to do it. And so I did get to a point, especially probably in the last 3 or 4 years of my career, where I did stop putting that enormous pressure on myself that I had to do everything, and I started to pick and choose and do things that there was always the responsibility of sport and of sponsors, but a little less when you do well. When you're sort of the number one for a while, you get a bit of a free ride.
Yeah. With you mentioned Chicago Marathon, was just in the vague recesses of my mind, was there a bit of a time where you focused solely on marathon because it was coming into the Olympics, then women's marathon, and did you have just a bit of a thought to that?
I don't think I thought about the Olympics. It was more that I always thought I had a good marathon in me. I always thought I had a sub 2:30 marathon in me. I think I did 2:32 at Pittsburgh, and I just sort of thought, well, this is, and the sponsor, I was with Reebok then, and they really were happy that I did triathlon or running. So, and I won a couple of road races, which I really found fun. Like actually this was fun, and I just thought, I'd love to explore that. I have what I could do, because to be honest, marathon was still bigger in those days than Ironman. They were still the biggest stars. Well, from my perspective, they certainly were. And I thought, well, maybe I'll, and I thought Chicago Marathon would be it, because I've been running very well. I think it's probably the year I won Bix, and I did, I think, third or fourth at Boulder, and I third or fourth at Legs. I did some very, very good running events. But I was, it's like everyone says, but I was inexperienced at marathoning. And, and I thought Chicago would be, maybe be my day. And I went out far too fast. I don't know what time. I think I did like a 33 or something, but it taught me a bit of a lesson. Don't be so freaking, arrogant.
But you're Erin, you're never going to die wondering, because you're Erin. That's the way it is.
Go hard or go home, right? It's
And because mixed in with all of that, you sort of did the duathlons, like the mega ones, Offingen and the Poundman, the long ones, and so on. So
but that was all very much part of triathlon then. It worked in on the season. It didn't have any, clash of other dates, and it was nice, and it wasn't extreme. Like it wasn't like a 200k bike ride and a 50k. I don't know. It worked in. It wasn't a duathlon, but it worked in as a triathlon. And and I always loved hilly events, running and biking. Anything with hills in it, I always felt I owned. And so that was, those events were sort of a gravy train. I loved them. Same with peace.
Yeah, I'm thinking that maybe, other than Debbie Nelson, you're probably the only two Kiwis that have won Zoffingen.
There's someone. Did Matt Brick do it?
Matt Brick, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm going to chuck it out there to say Fiona Doherty went very well there one year, but I might have to take that back.
I think so as well. I think you're right. Absolutely.
I think Fiona Doherty won that one year.
Yeah, she was another. That's a good reminder. She did very, very well in the sport. Yes.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah. Erin, you had the win in Auckland in 1990, and you headed home. Your good friend Jan Wanklin
Yes,
on that occasion. But then, we've talked about sort of the duathlons and so on. It was a wee while before we saw you back on the start line at Ironman New Zealand in 1994. Things had changed really dramatically for you when you get to the start line in 1994. Just tell us a wee bit about that.
can't remember.
Well, you were a mum.
Oh, was I? There you go.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
you were a
I
mum.
do
Yeah.
remember now because I had those photos. That's right. I had a photo. We got to know some people, and we stayed with them in Godley Crescent in Auckland. And they actually owned Lucy Lawless's house. Well, she bought the house from them. That's right. I was a mum, and I had photos taken there. So yes, and to be fair, I was never ever going to compete after having been a mum.
Yeah.
So that was, I think that was sort of I'm not. Why did I do that? I must have done the Ironman the year before though. I must have done the Ironman and got second when Miguel, because he was born in April. So I think I did the Ironman when he was about 6 months, 7 months. Got second, and then maybe I just wasn't quite finished. I maybe there was some. It was probably a financial thing, to be perfectly honest. I think Reebok were doing this woman and baby thing, and so because I did finish that same year, I think I retired that same year. Correct?
Yeah, well, that's sort of what I'm reading. It's quite
Yeah.
funny hearing you
Yeah.
recount it.
So
It was almost a loyalty thing that you were doing.
I'm
Yeah.
actually surprised I did it now that I think about it. But I think it was that whole Reebok, and they had done that big campaign for the Hawaiian Ironman with me, and it was going to be this whole, mother and baby. I was meant to be the first woman that had a baby to win the Ironman. I didn't. I got second, and maybe I thought I better go and do Auckland and win it.
Yeah. So you did.
So I did.
So you did.
Yeah.
And that was a great way to I guess, round off the career. You retired after that. Was that the last sort of thing you did, or was there any?
I think I did. I went to one event in America a couple of months after called Wilkes-Barre, and I went there because we stayed with some really lovely people, and I loved that event. We had this really nice home we stayed in with these nice people, hilly as hell course. No one was ever going to beat me on it, even if I wasn't all that fit. So I did that, and then I was going to do one event in California. It was it might have even been a USTS, and don't ask me why, but I was there. We were staying at the Tinley's place, and Miguel was a baby. Must have been, he was over a year then. And Scott wakes me up in the morning. Okay, off we go. We get a race. I said, "Nah, I'm not going." And that was it.
That was it. Yeah.
That was
nice
it.
way to- yeah.
No, I'm not going. I've done it. I'm finished.
And in your mind, then, Erin, you were happy just to go. That's me. I'm
Yes.
done.
Yes.
Walk away.
Yes. Yeah. I'm very like that. As I said earlier, I'm quite clinical. I do as best as I can at something, and I fill my body, mind, and soul with it, and then I'm like, when I make up my mind, that's it, done.
So
And
we're,
then, so I was going to say then for that, the gap, I guess the gap that sport had. I mean, you've always been into fitness and everything, but it was just family filled that gap. After that, was that what and work?
Yeah,
and
I think it's one of the reasons that women can retire from sport a little bit softer and easier than men, especially if you have a child. Because, and I'm not saying you should have a child, but you've got something to put so much energy straight into.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that people struggle giving up, elite sport or full-time sport or whatever you want to call it. People struggle, there's statistics everywhere. And I think that not that that's why I had a child, but that you've got something else that fills your life, fills your brain, fills all your energy, it just enables you to transition better. I really believe that. And so yeah, I was very happy to be, a mum pushing around a baby, walking up and down, the street, and being at home and cuddling, playing, talking, and until I wasn't. And then, I did something else.
yeah. Looking back now, obviously, a lot of times elapsed and so on. How do you sort of look at it now? Because you're not the most sentimental person I know. So do
No.
you look back on fondness at it, or do you look back and go, that was me. That was just some batshit crazy stuff that we were doing back then. How does it sort of feel now, looking back at the things that you did?
Well, I'm much softer now. No, there's a part of elite athletes, and I'm happy enough to acknowledge it. Maybe more women than men, but I'm not sure. That has this real struggle when they give up. This sort of like, are they better than me? And who thinks I was the best? And I was everyone understand that I did that before they did it? And does anyone know that I ran fast? And and I certainly had years, even though I was did other things. That year, be go, that wasn't that great. That wasn't great. Look, well,
Yeah.
there was no headwinds at Kona that year, and there was no this, and it was much cooler. And
Yeah.
but I've really mellowed as you do, and I went to an event in Europe last year as sort of an old legendy person, and I absolutely loved being around the athletes. I loved being around the young athletes, all of them. I loved sort of seeing, what they were, all the dedication, the passion, the drive, and, the expertise they're putting into the sport. And and so I wouldn't have cared who won the Ironman for 20 years after I did. But now I really enjoy, I'm not going to watch it all day, every day, but I really now enjoy seeing who's done what time they've done, what equipment they're using, because I can now reflect on, that this is a new level of excellence, and doesn't demean my effort. So I feel very good about what I did, and I feel very respectful and in life, really proud of what they're doing. I just love to see them. Each time I see, Hayden Wild doing something, or any of them, I think, God, it's just great. And I just love even listening to them. I think they're great ambassadors. Most of them are very good with the media, and, they travel and work and train hard, and they race incredibly. So I now would say I am thrilled that I had the opportunity to be a triathlete and to have had the ability to be where I was at, and, happy in all spaces of it.
And we sometimes get you on the start line at club races too.
Oh, no. I haven't.
Yes,
Where?
we have down at Scarborough.
Oh, that was a once-off.
Oh, more than once. We've seen you there a couple of times.
I get on the start line a bit more now. I do a few swimming events because now,
Yeah.
I'm old and it doesn't matter. Look, we're so fortunate if you can, do any exercise, if you can get on a start line, and I'm thrilled for every single person that's out there doing anything.
Yeah.
I just got just a quick thing. Have you ever thought, I don't know how well it'll sit with you, but, obviously Brian and I have a lot to do with the athletes as commentators at Ironman New Zealand and just around the traps as you do. A lot of, especially New Zealand athletes, they really look up to you as a role model and a real pioneer in our sport and a real legend in our sport. How does that sit with you? I mean, from what you're saying now, you seem to have grown more comfortable with that kind of thing as the years have gone.
Oh, look, I think it's when I went to, it was actually the Collins Cup event last year, I just felt like an, old has-been, to be perfectly honest, because I don't expect people have to look up to the people who've gone before them. I just don't have that sentimentality that, that those who have done well before earn some sort of right to be, I've never ever had that. But I was, talking to a few of the women that I was, just blown away to be talking to. And I was thinking, oh my God, I'm almost surprised they know who I am. And that's the truth. I've never had an ego. So, if I influence, I do think I influenced a lot of, you know, run of the mill, want to finish a triathlon sort of people, and I'm very proud of that because I hear it all the time. I'm proud of the fact that I was there standing up for women, and I'm sure, I think I've helped women in triathlon be where they are, which is, I think triathlon's about one of the most equal sports in the world that it's pretty damn good in comparison to most. So I feel good about that. I don't really think if I went to an event, I would be, in the background thinking, oh God, are we thinking, look at that old tart.
No, but you see the commentators that see you and they'd say, hey, there's Brian and Cameron, and we'd haul you out and we'd have to interview you because you're Erin. But look, you've talked about the things that you stood up for, and you've always been on the right side of history with all of those things and so on. But your influence, we talked about it within triathlon, but here's a lovely story. Belinda Colling, former Silver Ferns netballer,
Yes.
and they won after a few trip ups along the way. They finally won the world title in 2003.
And where that story was going, the internet's dropped out on us again,
Yes.
Erin. You dropped out again.
You dropped out there.
Am I back? Am I back? Okay.
You're back. You're back.
We're on bated breath for the rest of the story.
Well, 2003, the Silver Ferns, they finally, in Jamaica, win the world title. And I'm talking to Belinda afterwards, and she talked about the influence that you had on the team. You went and spoke to them beforehand, and you talked about your training and what you'd done. That became their theme. That was their whole mantra when they were doubting themselves was, what would Erin do? Would Erin do this? That was the whole thing, and that was what drove them to train like never before and so on. And
that's amazing, because I do remember going to speak to them. That's the first time I've ever heard that, and that's quite lovely.
Well, there you go. Well, for us, Erin, we're grateful that you've given us your time on the Old School Tri Show, and you've been you're just absolutely iconic in Ironman New Zealand and globally, and not just Ironman but the sport of triathlon. And we thank you for joining us this evening.
You are more than welcome. Thank you so much for all the work that you guys do for the sport of triathlon. It's in a good space, and I think it's wonderful.